So we'll start off with some announcements. First, I'm very pleased to share that the mayor has appointed Jacqueline Sherman as the interim chair of the Board of Correction. She's served as a board member since July 2018, and the board members, I know, the staff, and I am also, all of us are thrilled about your appointment, and we thank you for your ongoing service and leadership.
Thank you, Martha. And it's my pleasure to announce that today we welcome a new board member, Tino Hernandez. Tino previously served as President and Chief Executive Officer of Samaritan Daytop Village, where he was responsible for the administration of one of the largest nonprofit providers of community-based mental health and substance use treatment services in New York State. Mr. Hernandez also serves on the Governor's Behavioral Health Services Advisory Council and is the past president of the Coalition of Behavioral Health Agencies. He was nominated to the board by the presiding justices of the Appellate Division of the Supreme Court, First and Second Judicial Departments, and was appointed by the mayor. Welcome, Member Hernandez. We look forward to working with you.
I also have very bittersweet news, which is to announce that after 4 years, I'm leaving the board in mid-July. So this is not my last public meeting. I will be here next month. But I wanted to put that news out there because we are totally committed to a smooth and seamless transition, which we have started to work on already. The board will be conducting a full search for a new leader to continue to grow this very, very critical agency with a superb board and a wonderful, committed, and very creative staff, and an agency with much work before it.
Thank you, Martha, and thank you for your exceptional leadership over the past 4 years. Next month, I know the board and I look forward to celebrating your many accomplishments in your role. And as Martha mentioned, the board will be conducting a full search for the next executive director. We expect to publish a job posting in the very near future.
We also obviously have very sad news to discuss today, and I have the responsibility to announce that there were 2 tragic deaths that occurred this week in DOC custody. The board has committed to announcing each death in custody at the meeting following any death. A 27-year-old transgender woman, Layleen Polanco, died at the Rose M. Singer Center on June 7th, and a 54-year-old man died at Bellevue Hospital Prison Ward on June 9th. We extend our deepest sympathies to the friends and families of these 2 people, and want to remind everyone of our commitment to independent and transparent reviews of their death. Any death in custody is a tragedy that requires a thorough, independent investigation and, more importantly, action to prevent future deaths. As we do for every death in custody, the board is reviewing all available video and records related to these 2 deaths, but has not yet received the autopsies and medical records in these cases. I think we also understand that Commissioner Brand would like to make a statement on this as well. Yeah, are you?
Commissioner Brand?
And then you second. Okay.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It's on this solemn occasion that I'm here to address the board and the public regarding 2 recent deaths in our facilities. The first was of a young transgender woman known as Layleen Polanco, and the second was of an older gentleman who passed away in the ICU of Bellevue Hospital while under doctor's care. I would like to extend my deepest condolences to both of their families and loved ones during this difficult time. We take such matters extremely seriously, and investigations into both incidents are ongoing. We are committed to providing the board with updated information as additional facts emerge, and I appreciate the board's understanding that there is not much that can be said with specificity about these cases at this time. Given the tragic nature of these events, the department understands the need for prompt answers, especially in the case of Layleen Polanco, who was 27 years old. It's the human condition to fill in the blanks when we're seeking answers, particularly in the loss of a loved one. I've done it myself. And in this day and age when information is typically at our fingertips, we recognize that it's hard to wait for a determination for the cause of death. It's painful and it's frustrating for her family and her friends. I assure you, however, that all parties are working quickly and diligently to investigate, analyze, and determine the manner of this tragic death. Layleen's family rightfully deserves answers, and I hope that they find some comfort in the chief medical examiner's public statement that trauma did not contribute to her untimely death. The department remains committed to providing her loved ones with answers as soon as they become available. This is still under investigation, but so far, there is no evidence of violence or foul play. The safety of those entrusted to the department's custody remains my #1 priority. That includes providing every person in our custody with a safe and appropriate housing assignment. The Department of Correction is a national leader in transgender housing practices and remains committed to housing individuals in our care by gender identity. Our transgender housing unit is located in the female facility, and a transgender individual may reside in the THU, a general population unit at Rosie's, our female facility, or they may elect to reside in a male facility. We are proud of the work that we have done to get here, and we remain committed to working with advocates and members of the community to ensure that our policies provide safe, fair, and respectful treatment of our transgender population. In the case of Ms. Polanco, she was initially admitted to Rosie's and remained housed there with other females for the duration of her time in our custody. As the investigation continues, we are committed to treating her memory and her family with respect. And once again, we will share more information with the board, the public, and her family as we receive it. Thank you for the opportunity to address you all this morning. Thank you. Did someone have a question? Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner. The board will work, will investigate this as well with CHS and with the department. I was out there yesterday touring RNDC, touring Rose M. Singer, and speaking with persons in the trans unit, and just want to make two comments. I don't know the cause of death right now. I'm not going to be speaking about the medical or correctional issues involved in the death. But it is terrible that this young woman was in jail for 2 misdemeanors and a $501 bail, and that should not happen. And it doesn't have anything to do with her death specifically, except it probably has everything to do with her death specifically, if she had not been locked in a solitary confinement area. Secondly, the man who died at Bellevue, he had serious illness, and I know and I assume, based upon my understanding and knowledge about Bellevue, that he received the best care that this country could offer to him, but he was there on a parole violation. So we should just keep in mind when we're talking about the operations of these facilities and our day-to-day work and our attempts to do the right thing, that the fundamental concern that we have here is broken, and neither of these people should have been in jail. Thank you.
I'm really, really sorry to hear about these deaths. I actually didn't know about this until you just announced this. This is absolutely heartbreaking. But this is something I didn't raise with the board before, but I would suggest that we now do have a process where we announce the deaths, but I don't know that we've ever reported back with respect to the findings and the investigations and at least the information that we could release with respect to policies and practices that we might look at changing. So I would suggest that it's something the board consider. We make these announcements, but I'm sure the public would like to know what the resolution of these are. And again, my deepest apologies, and to you as well, Commissioner. I'm sure this is a terrible loss.
Thank you. And also would like to extend my deepest condolences and a commitment to work to follow up, to investigate as this board is bound to do, and to ensure that the investigation, that we monitor the investigation. And I very much appreciate your suggestion, member. Our scheduled business today will start by voting on the draft May 14th board meeting minutes, which board members have received. Does a board member move for a vote to approve the minutes? Move. Thank you. Are there any edits or questions? Members vote to approve the May 14th, 2019 board minutes? Okay. Thank you. We'll move to public comments on the variance votes. So the board has 4 variance votes scheduled for today related to the operation of the Horizon Adolescent Facility. All of today's variances have been previously approved by the board. Because of these votes, we have a public comment now and at the end of the meeting. We ask that speakers limit their comments during this period to the variance request and limit those remarks to 3 minutes in length. We will have an additional public comment period on all other matters to close today's meeting. The iPad on the stage will tell you how much time you have left. Our first speaker is Mary Lynn Whirlwas.
Good morning. I'm Mary Lynn Whirlwas of the Prisoners' Rights Project of the Legal Aid Society. Welcome, Mr. Hernandez, to the board and chair. Just speaking on the variances, there's a lot of variances, so I'm just going to tick a few thoughts off quickly. These variances, the fact that they've been approved before actually mitigates against their extension. We've given the department some time to try to get the Horizon facility up to the standards, and there has not been the oversight of the compliance with conditions of these variances that we expected when the variances were granted. To tick through a few things, the nursery. No one's given birth at Horizon, no one ever should, but there have been pregnant girls there. And even the department and ACS must prepare for that eventuality because it could happen, and it's not in their control whether or not someone who is pregnant stays incarcerated. There just simply has to be, the correction law is clear, there has to be a nursery should that girl or young woman give birth in Horizon. We don't think that a nursery space needs to lie fallow, but it just needs to be made clear that should that happen, we are not going to separate families in the city because of saying we don't have room to keep a baby with her mother, if that happens. Now, correspondence, just to point out the department's variance request about limitations on correspondence, some very troubling concerns, but some very legitimate concerns managing correspondence with young people from the facilities. But it all says that this correspondence censorship will happen according to a procedure that will be announced. When? Horizon's been open since October. When are we going to see this procedure that keeps being promised in the variance requests? That's what its legality depends on, and the board needs to insist that that happen. I'm just going to, though, in the remaining minute, focus on the bathrooms. That is the biggest part. The board, this variance request should be denied because the department has not met the conditions that have been imposed on it. What do I base this on? Their own audits that have been put on your website. What they are showing is that youth are not getting to the bathroom within 5 minutes of turning a light on their cell. Some of the reasons they're not doing it is their own reports are showing that in these once-a-month inspections, Youth are being held in cells where the lights are not working. Why are those cells occupied? If you cannot go to the bathroom, if you cannot get drinking water and alert someone of that need because of a malfunction of the light, yes, lights go out. Take that cell offline. Why do these reports show that? That is just insane. And we need to, if they're going to do this, if you're going to grant these variances, the board also needs to do oversight. Thank you.
Thank you. Danielle Gerard.
Good morning, Interim Chair Sherman, Vice Chair Mr. Richards, and board members. I'm Danielle Gerard from Children's Rights. I'm a staff attorney there, and I've testified before you regarding these variances. In January, again, we urged the board to require the department to comply with existing minimum standards and deny these variance requests. We would like to note that all three of the requested variances from these minimum standards are based on inadequacies of the physical design and space limitations of Horizon itself. It is not clear what the department is considering for long-term solutions, which we view as critical to meeting the department's obligations to youth at Horizon. Regarding the requested variance on dry cells, the department's March and April dry cell audit reports note several deficiencies, including red lights not working for several weeks in 2 of the rooms, outdated information provided to staff and residents regarding procedures, log books missing required entries or containing incomplete entries, access to bathroom or drinking water exceeding the 5-minute limit, and a lack of recorded information about confined residents' access to bathrooms and/or drinking water. Children's Rights is concerned about the use of dry cells at all and the dignity of residents having to ask to use the bathroom, particularly in the case of female residents. Regarding the requested variance on law libraries, we are pleased to note that according to the February and March audits, tablets were generally available to residents, an improvement from the November 18 audit nonetheless. We would like to request that the board require the department to specify its plans to provide an actual law library for residents of Horizon. Regarding the requested variance on a nursery program, we again echo the concerns raised by the board at the July 2018 meeting. Regardless of whether it is, quote, very improbable that a pregnant youth would give birth during her short stay, close quote, at Horizon, the department should be prepared for this eventuality and provide nursery program services there. For all 3 of these requested variances, the proposed corrective actions seem designed as temporary fixes and do not fully address the underlying inadequacies of the Horizon facility itself. Regarding the requested variance on correspondence, the department does not provide sufficiently specific criteria pursuant to which prohibitions on certain correspondence would be based, nor the rationale for such prohibitions. Children's Rights believes there needs to be much greater clarity around this issue to the extent that it is beneficial to Horizon residents at all. Otherwise, the restrictions could very well end up being overbroad and punitive. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's the end of our public comments, so we will, for this stage. So now we'd like to invite ACS and DOC up to provide an update on Raise the Age implementation and also to present their variance requests, beginning with request on single occupancy dry cells. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Tim Roach. I'd like to make a brief statement. My name is Tim Roach. I am the Senior Policy Advisor at the Division of Youth and Family Justice at the Administration of Children's Services. I appreciate the opportunity this morning to discuss Raise the Age, the Horizon Juvenile Center, and the variance renewal requests alongside my colleagues from ACS and the Department of Correction. As you know, for the past 8 months, pursuant to state Raise the Age legislation, 16 and 17-year-old youth previously housed on Rikers Island and 17-year-olds arrested and detained since October 1st of 2018 have been housed at Horizon, the city's specialized juvenile detention facility. We refer to these youth as pre-RTA youth. At Horizon, ACS and DOC have collaborated to jointly operate a facility that provides for the safety, security, and well-being of youth in a developmentally appropriate setting and manner. DOC correction officers provide safety and security, while ACS staff provide programming, case management, and operations. I would like to make provide a brief update about Horizon and Raise the Age implementation before we turn to the variances. Yesterday, there were 59 youth at Horizon, only 3 of whom were part of the original 93 transferred from Rikers Island at the end of September of 2018. Youth at Horizon attend school on-site at DOE's Passages Academy, have access to offerings of vocational training and ACS's large array of contracted arts, recreation, and social enrichment programming, as well as on-site health and mental health services, all of which is intended to provide the therapeutic and educational interventions that will improve the young person's well-being and life outcomes. This summer, youth at Horizon will be able to participate in the Department of Youth and Community Development's Summer Youth Employment Program, which allow them to work during the summer up to 25 hours per week at either Horizon or in the community post-release. ACS case managers are currently working with youth to submit applications to DYCD. So far, 35 applications have been submitted. We have retained 60 slots. We all agree that providing youth with daily opportunities for large muscle exercise and space for recreation is essential. Youth at Horizon have the opportunity to go outside built into their daily schedule. As has always been the case, youth are able to access the interior courtyard and the patios in the housing units. In April, temporary outdoor basketball courts were completed and have been available to youth since. By the end of this week, work will be completed on the permanent basketball court, offering youth an additional large outdoor recreation area. ACS is continuing to work with our city partners to safely increase the access to additional outdoor space at Horizon. Providing youth with an extensive array of programming to keep them engaged while in detention and to help them pursue interests when they leave is a critical component of the milieu and offerings at Horizon. As you may know, DYCD recently completed an RFP process for a contractor to administer and coordinate the programming activities at Horizon. ACS has truly appreciated the partnership and collaboration with Friends of Island Academy, particularly during the initial challenging days of the transition from Rikers. The competitive RFP process, however, resulted in the selection of a new provider, the Center for Community Alternatives. CCA will take over as the contractor for programming on July 1st of 2019. ACS surveyed youth at Horizon to learn more about the most popular programming and share this information with CCA. CCA subcontracts with many of the same providers as Friends of Island Academy and has agreed to keep the most popular programs. CCA is also currently the contractor for programming at Crossroads, our other detention facility. We therefore anticipate very little, if any, disruption in program offerings. As to the hiring of youth development specialists, ACS's aggressive recruitment plan has resulted in the hiring of more than 425 youth development specialists to date. We are still recruiting to meet our goal of hiring a total of approximately 700 YDS. We remain on track for ACS to assume operational control of Horizon by January of 2020. ACS has worked hard with DOC, the unions, and other partners to develop a phased plan to reintroduce youth development specialists to Horizon over a period of 6 months. We began by bringing 5 YDS supervisors to Horizon in April to observe operations, and we will move to assume responsibility for direct care in multiple stages so the transition is seamless and orderly for both the staff and the youth. Just yesterday, nearly 50 YDS staff began training at Horizon and will soon work alongside DOC staff in the orientation unit, the mental health unit, and the female unit. During the initial phase, YDS staff will be assigned on all 3 shifts to shadow DOC staff on the identified units as a method of familiarizing them with unit tempo and practice and to become acquainted with the youth assigned to the unit. This phase of the transition will also be used to message expectations by ACS to youth on the unit. After the initial phase-in, DOC staffing on the unit will be reduced, allowing YDS staff to begin assuming operational control of the unit. This phased process will roll out in 3 housing units at a time over a period of approximately 6 months until YDS staff are in primary operational control of all housing units, as well as facility operations and support functions, allowing for a significant reduction in DOC staff. The transition of all assigned ACS staff into Horizon will be completed in December, at which time DOC will assume a mandated co-operational role. This concludes my statement. Thank you.
Good morning. I want to welcome Board Member Hernandez. Welcome. Executive Director King, Interim Chairman Sherman. Good morning. Distinguished members of the board, good morning. So, pursuant to Section 1-15C of the New York City Board of Correction minimum standards, the New York City Department of Correction requests a 6-month renewal to the limited variance from the Board of Correction minimum standards on overcrowding, which requires each single occupancy cell to contain a flush toilet and a wash basin with drinking water for the purposes of establishing the specialized juvenile detention facility at Horizon Juvenile Center. This continuing variance renewal will take effect on July 8, 2019, the date in which the current variance is set to expire. For more than 20 years, the juvenile justice system across the country have moved in the direction of creating smaller and more home-like settings for youth in custody. This has been purposeful effort in creating smaller and more home-like settings for the youth in custody. There has been a purposeful effort to afford young offenders with the environment that differs from the more stark correctional spaces frequently found in adult jail settings and prisons. Youth sleeping in rooms at Horizon have followed suit and are equipped with a bed, a desk, and shelves on which to place their clothing. Youths are also encouraged to decorate their rooms in appropriate ways in order to make it more personalized and familiar and a more like home-like setting. Adding toilets and sinks are a common practice in adult jails and prisons and are inconsistent with the city's alignment to follow the best practices nationwide. Furthermore, the residents in dry cells are afforded more privacy than those in cells with a sink and toilet. As per the minimum requirements of the existing variance, Horizon residents will be escorted to the unoccupied housing area bathroom to access both drinking water and the toilet within 5 minutes of the request, absent extenuating circumstances. The department appreciates the board's consideration of this continuing variance request, which, if granted, will allow the department, in conjunction with ACS, to continue to provide Horizon residents with their housing needs consistent with the goals of the Raise the Age. We're happy to report that our records indicate that we have done self-audits, and we're actually doing better in this reporting period than we were in the last reporting period. Residents from this reporting period were granted access to the bathroom and to drinking water 96% of the time within the allotted 5 minutes, and only 2% of the time when it went over the 5 minutes, not to exceed 10. So it was usually about 2 or 3 minute difference. And part of the reason for that is we only allow one resident out at a time. So if one resident is using the restroom, then the other resident activates their light. They have to wait for that resident to go back in for safety reasons. And with some of the public statements, there was a remark about lights not working and people being made to wait an inordinate amount of time. Our internal records indicate that we have 2 lights that were malfunctioned, and those cells are offline. If a light is not working, a work order is put in immediately, and it's either fixed or we just take it offline because of the populace that we have, the number of residents that are currently there. In addition to that, with respect to having residents have access to water, we have directed the warden and the management team to allow residents to keep either up to 1 to 2 glasses of water with a cup in their cell should they need to have it during the night or while they're otherwise in their room.
Thank you. Will a board member move to vote on the requested 6-month variance from minimum standard 1-04B2, overcrowding, including single occupancy wet cells at the specialized juvenile detention facility? I'll open it up. Okay. Now I'll open the floor to questions, debate.
I appreciate the efforts that the department is making to provide water to try to provide water to people at night, as we discussed the last time. But I still think that people should be able to go to the bathroom without permission, and that I'm sure I believe that the department and ACS share the goal that the best situation would be that people would just go to the bathroom. And that freely, and the doors wouldn't have to be locked at night, like at the other kind of settings you describe, and I think that's probably an achievable goal. Certainly, it's an achievable goal to have 2 people out when you have 2 staff there. I would say, but in any case, I think that this is really more of a flaw than a feature to not have bathrooms available for the children, or to not have free access to it. I just want to raise in this context, there's another major bathroom issue at Horizon, which is that there's no bathroom in the West Education Wing, and the lack of a bathroom there means that when adolescents go to school, and want to go to the bathroom, they cannot go to the bathroom because there's no bathroom there. And if they need to go to the bathroom, they have to go back to their housing areas, which are not proximate to that. And then when they go back to the housing areas, through some process that I do not understand, but you all probably do, they don't end up going back to school at a high rate. So there's decreased attendance in the classes in the afternoon because of a lack of a bathroom. Now, the board, I hope, will be out of the responsibility of advising and monitoring and keeping Horizon to our rules soon, because ACS will assume responsibility. But and my vote against this resolution is not going to make you build lots of bathrooms in the cells, but you really should build a bathroom for the school, and it should have been there already, and something should be done to prevent people not going back to the school. So I appreciate the work you're doing, but I'm not going to be able to vote in support of this.
And could you help me understand why one person at a time? How many people are in a hall? What's the staffing ratio? How many stalls do we have? That's sort of one set of questions. Then the other, I looked at the audit report, and it said that young people who are in room detention, when they request to go to the bathroom, it's not documented in the log for some reason, or it's not counted. Could you speak to that?
What's room? Are you referring to room confinement?
Room confinement.
Right. No, so whether or not they're in room confinement has no basis on it. Anytime that the resident does not have access to the bathroom, there is an indicator light in the room. So whether that is because they're in the room because of the overnight period, which they go into the room, or if they've been placed into room confinement pursuant to some kind of justifiable reason, if they activate that light, the expectation is that they are given access to the bathroom within 5 minutes, and the objective findings, and I just want to clarify for the board, this is not just reading a logbook. They're internal audits where we're looking at the documentary evidence of the logbook and we're comparing it to Genetech media. So if the light comes on at 11 o'clock and that resident is not taken to the bathroom by 11:05, and we look to see that that is consistent with what has been documented in the logbook. And if it's not documented that way, we find ourselves to be not in compliance. And like I said, in this reporting period from January to April, the department has been in compliance 96% of the time, and out of compliance was the 2%, which is a 5 to 10 minute range. So we're talking about someone waiting 6, 7, or 8 minutes, and some of the mitigating factors for that was because there was another resident out. To address your second question, our Our utmost concern and a paramount concern is always safety of the staff and the residents alike. The propensity for something to happen with 2 or more people are out with limited staff on an overnight shift just increases. We want to avoid any kind of deleterious outcome, so we want to make sure that we move 1 person at a time in a safe and orderly manner.
So what's the number in the hall, and how many staff do you have?
That's a variable number based on the population that's there, but at any, what do we have?
Right now. Our ratio from ours is 5 to 1.
So five people to 1 officer.
Right. I'm sorry, I thought you were talking about what is the total census right now. I mean,
No,
just
in a
general.
hall.
Yes. Okay.
Because the issue is, right, going to the bathroom, so it's by hall. So in a hall, how many young people do you have, and how many officers? So you said 5 to 1, so if you have 10 young people, you have 2 officers.
It's going to always be 2 officers, regardless of
Yeah.
Always 2 officers.
Right, so even if there was 1 resident there always has to be at least 2 officers. But we never, well, I shouldn't say never, but, so no matter what, even if we had 1 female resident in a hall by herself, there would still be 2, at least 2 correctional officers, and now, probably YDS as well.
And have you looked at our audit report?
Yes.
And in that report, did you notice that it did say that people who are in room confinement are not counted for some reason in the logbook? So either we got it wrong, or there's some disconnect.
Well,
and perhaps we should talk and take a look at that.
We're going to circle back and just to make sure we're giving you extremely accurate information.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Or?
Yeah, I just have one question. Just since we have heard the issue of the lights not working, you said, well, if it doesn't get fixed, you move them out. How much time do you allow? I mean, if the light's not working, do you move them then, or how many days do you allow it to be fixed?
they're moved out immediately.
Okay.
Yes.
So you're not, I
No.
mean, you would agree not to use cells
Absolutely.
where the light is not working?
Absolutely.
Correct? Okay,
Yes.
Thank you.
I would just like to also add that, and as we talked about before, what we are working toward is a transition into something that is much more of a home-like environment, much more juvenile justice oriented. This has been a really interesting transition over these past many months, and I think that what you are seeing is actual real progress toward the objective that we are all heading toward, and that is the more home-like and just more relaxed environment that Chief Barnes mentioned, and that I think we all want for the young people at our secure detention facilities. I would also, though, say that we are trying hard to limit the number of hours that kids are in rooms locked. We are increasing the amount of program time. We are with the behavior management program. When fully implemented, will allow kids to stay up a little later, and so being able to limit the amount of time when kids are actually confined and unable to use or have access to the bathroom on their own time is something that we're sensitive to, and we are trying to reduce. So I think that will contribute to the issue, to resolving the issue of it as well.
Yeah, I just want to make a statement at this point, even notwithstanding some of these problems that we've heard about. I had the pleasure to tour Horizons, it was about a week ago. I was really impressed with what I saw. 5 years ago when I was appointed to this board, these same kids were locked up in solitary, not these kids, but kids their age under their circumstances were locked up in solitary for sometimes a year at a time. It was horrific the way children were treated 5 years ago. Now they're off Rikers Island. There was a culture of respect. I sensed no tension, no culture of violence. There was direct engagement between the officers and the young people. They were in school, they were in recreation. I don't think this was an unusual day. I think this is a typical day at Horizons. So as I said on a recent phone call we had, I really commend all of you who have been involved in making this transition thus far. And I'm confident, notwithstanding some problems, I think it's really impressive you're doing self-audits. That's something that I know the board has really worked on, DOC doing more of it. So notwithstanding some of these problems, I certainly am going to support this variance and all of your variances as you go through this transition, and I trust that you really are trying very hard to meet the young people's needs. Again, I was very impressed with what I saw.
And I would, being that Brianne went out there and she saw it, and there's no tension, and it is a far cry from what we've seen.
You were there as well?
I haven't been there yet. A far cry of Rikers. I would encourage us to treat people, like you said, like home life, right? And I don't recall at home when I was younger asking my parents if I had to go to the bathroom. So if we're creating an environment where we want it to be home-like, maybe we can push the envelope and start exploring ways that we can treat young people really like they're home and not requesting to push a button to go to the bathroom, even though we've made a lot of progress. And I have no doubt in my mind about that, so.
Thank you.
Thank you. Martha, please read the existing conditions.
There are 5 existing conditions on this variance. I'll read them together. These are the conditions you approved on this variance six months ago. 1, with respect to youth locked in dry cells, housing unit staff will escort residents of Horizon to the unoccupied housing area bathroom and will provide residents with drinking water within 5 minutes of the request, absent extenuating circumstances. 2, housing unit staff will document when a bathroom escort or drinking water is requested. Documentation will include the time of the request and the time escorting begins. 3, Horizon staff shall not retaliate against residents who request bathroom access or drinking water. 4, notice of the specific terms and conditions of this variance and the right to notify the board of any related violations shall be provided to Horizon residents. And 5, the department shall provide the board with a monthly audit on its compliance with the implementation of this variance and foregoing conditions. The department shall provide its monthly public audit to the board within 15 days of the end of each month.
Will a board member move to vote on the existing conditions? Second? Are there any comments on the existing conditions?
No, ma'am.
Are there any comments from board members? Then by a roll call vote, I'll ask board members to vote on the existing conditions. Board member Safier? Perino? Hernandez?
Support.
Richards?
Support.
Hamel?
Yes.
Cohen? Yes. Jones Austin?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So by unanimous vote, the existing conditions are approved. Are there any other proposed conditions? Then we'll move to a vote on the requested variance with the approved conditions. Will a board member make a motion? Second?
Seconded.
Okay. Mr. Safier? Perino? Hernandez?
Support.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. By a vote of 7 to 1. The variance is approved.
If we could now move on to the law library variance.
I wanted to thank you, Judge, for your genuine feedback, and we take a lot of pride, and I'd welcome any member of the board if they'd ever want to visit Horizon. My staff and I will make ourselves available. It really, you should come out and see the hard work that's being done collaboratively between ACS and the Department of Correction. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Can you clarify for me?
Yes, sir.
What you do versus what the warden?
So the warden is the commanding officer of Horizon, and I'm an acting assistant chief, so I oversee several different facilities. So I'm Warden Presley's direct supervisor.
You oversee several different facilities?
Right. I oversee Robert N. Davern Center, Horizon Juvenile Justice Center, the hospital prison wards, Criminal Justice Bureau.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Yeah, just like a comment. In the beginning, this was a lot of people were very concerned where it might start, but I think Gordon did an amazing job.
I just got to say that I'm really I'm impressed that you know how things have really shifted from Horizons, and like that was like the target, and like a lot of stuff was happening to Horizons is a well-running facility, and you know, so many different moving parts that your staff had to really understand that you have to work with ACS, and we're a team, and to get two agencies together, it took a lot of leadership there to get to where it is today. And, you know, I just got to commend you, like, publicly and say, you know, the whole team, you know, in general did an amazing job. And, Chief, you should be proud.
Thank you, Mr. Perino. I appreciate it. And this is truly a team effort. I would be remiss if I didn't say that the collaboration with ACS is unparalleled. You know, we have any issues that we have, we talk about it before they become problems. There's constant communication. And, you know, just for many of you who have been in the correctional setting for quite some time, just to have staff interacting with residents in the way that we do, you know, effectively becoming part of their milieu and, you know, dining in the same hall and recreate, you know, it's a collaborative effort where I think that the buy-in from the staff at this facility is it's never been done before, at least in my tenure. And, you know, it's amazing when we look at how our staff interacts with the residents and the ACS staff, and it's like a very well-oiled machine, and it's a testament to how we'd like to move forward. So
Yes, I apologize if I didn't, you know, because I'm thinking ACS is an amazing component, and I meant to say that to incorporate ACS and the cooperation between two teams, because there's no way, and many city agencies, you're not going to put two agencies together and make a well-running machine, and you guys did. So I think a lot could be learned from this.
And I really, on behalf of our administration, we really would like to extend any invitation if anyone would like to visit the facility. We'd make ourselves available to.
Yeah, I would like to. You know, we'll talk.
Yep,
I would like to take a
absolutely.
walk. I went there in the very beginning when it was building up, and I would love to see the operation now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I just say one thing at the risk of talking too much? Now, what I'd love to see when the Department of Correction leaves is I'd love to see Warden Presley and her team back over at RNDC so we can do for the young adults what we've been trying to do for many years. So perhaps you can make that, help with the commissioner make that happen. Thanks.
Jackie and I visited Horizon last Monday, and we offered Warden Presley that option. She turned it down. But I'd like to make a...
When you're good, you're good.
And it was a serious question, because I want to make a comment and a question. You know, I really wasn't much of a conversation, but I met a young man who I think is going to turn 18 today, or tomorrow, or the next today.
Yes.
And so he had breakfast, and then I don't know if you use shackles when you transport someone back to Rikers Island.
Yes.
Probably do.
Yes.
And he was shackled and brought back to Rikers Island, to RNDC, which is a facility which is out of control. And I felt like I felt when the federal when the cripple letter came out a number of years ago, that how could judges, how could district attorneys, how could defense attorneys just say, let's send these 16 and 17-year-olds to Rikers Island, when they knew how dangerous it was. Now, there I was, and there he is today, and he's back in RNDC right now, which last month in May had 140 use of force incidents, up from the 90 the month before. So that's a credit to you for what you're doing there, and also the reality that we're facing. My question is DOC plan to leave in December? What is your plan to for removing yourself from from Horizon? I mean, we've heard that that ACS says they're ready to come in, ready to take it over in December. When is DOC planning to leave?
So as Mr. Roach stated in his opening remarks, there is a transition plan that for DOC staff to be drawn down as YDSs work alongside DOC staff, and the plan is to leave Horizon by the end of the year, as Mr. Roach stated.
By the end of 2019?
Yes, that is correct.
All right.
We have
Yes.
3 more variances to get through. So law library was next.
Sure. On January 8th, 2019, BOC renewed a limited 6-month variance to allow DOC to house pre-RTA youth in a facility that does not have a properly equipped and staffed law library. This variance included several conditions, including access to LexisNexis on tablets at least 2 hours per day, 7 days per week, during hours that do not conflict with school, programming, counseling, therapy, and other required daily activities, an on-site legal coordinator at least 5 days per week for a total of 20 hours, and monthly audits of compliance. As was documented in the audits, with only a few exceptions, there has been an on-site legal coordinator at Horizon as a resource to residents 5 days a week for a total of at least 20 hours weekly. The legal coordinator has been making herself available to the youth in the cafeteria from 11 to 1 p.m., at which time any youth can approach her without an appointment. Youth have also been able to make appointments with the legal coordinator, which have generally been scheduled between 3 and 5 p.m. during the week. Youth are also able to request the use of a tablet during this same 2-hour period. Signs are posted throughout the facility to ensure that youth are aware of these services. There are also request forms available, and the legal coordinator responds timely to all inquiries. Tablets are also available during weekend days, at which time program counselors can bring a tablet to youth who request one. Recent audits did note a need to create a backup plan for when the legal coordinator was not able to be in the facility for a planned or unplanned absence, and for days when youth were not able to have access to her. ACS has spoken with the contractor and agreed that for the month of June, this issue is being addressed by having a trained mitigation specialist provide backup for both planned and unplanned absences of the legal coordinator. While starting in July, CCA will be the contractor for programming at Horizon. Friends of Island Academy will continue to manage the legal coordinator contract until March of 2020. The hours of the legal coordinator will change to be a 4-hour block of time Monday through Friday rather than the 2-hour blocks during the week, beginning July 1st. The new schedule will help to ensure appropriate coverage by trained staff when the legal coordinator is unavailable.
Questions? Okay. Will a board member move to vote on the requested variance?
Second.
Second?
Second.
Okay, I will open the floor for debate, questions, conditions.
There's 5 existing conditions. I will read them briefly. 1, Horizon residents will be provided access to LexisNexis research capacity via tablets upon their request. 2, Horizon residents will be able to access the tablets for at least 2 hours per day, 7 days a week. Access shall be afforded to residents during daytime hours that do not conflict with schooling, programming, counseling, therapy sessions, and other required daily activities. 3, Horizon will have a skilled legal coordinator whose duties will include supporting Horizon residents and meeting their requests for assistance in performing legal research. 4, the legal coordinator will be on site at Horizon at least 5 days per week for a total of 20 hours per week. And 5, the department shall provide the board with a monthly audit on its compliance with the implementation of this variance and foregoing conditions. The department shall provide its audit to the board within 15 days of the end of each month.
Does a board member move to vote on the existing conditions?
Second.
Are there any comments on the conditions? Any comments from the board? Okay. I'll move to a vote. Dr. Safier? Support. Perino?
Support.
Hernandez? Yes. Richard?
Support.
Hamill?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, by a unanimous vote. The conditions are approved. Are there any further proposed conditions? Will a board member move for a vote on the requested variance with the conditions that have been approved? Second? Roll call. Dr. Safier?
Support.
Perino? Hernandez? Richard?
Support.
Hamill?
Yes.
Cohen?
Yes.
Jones? Yes. Yes. So by a unanimous vote, the variance with conditions is approved. And we'll move to the third variance.
Move to a discussion of correspondence.
On January 8th of 2019, BOC renewed a 6-month limited variance allowing us to identify individuals with whom mail correspondence is permissible and to limit correspondence only to those individuals based on the safety or security of the youth, the facility, and/or consistent with any existing court order. BOC included a requirement that by February 12th, 2019, DOC install outgoing mailboxes in common areas so that all halls have access on a daily basis to an outgoing mailbox. BOC also required that staff check the mailbox each business day. The mailbox requirement has been implemented. There is a mailbox on the first floor near the cafeteria and 3 mailboxes on the second floor near the main staircase. The mailboxes are clearly labeled, and ACS case managers check the mailboxes on a daily basis. ACS has implemented the variance by identifying a list of individuals with whom mail correspondence is prohibited or restricted based on the safety and security of the youth, the facility, and/or consistent with existing court orders. This practice is consistent with ACS's juvenile detention model. Under this system, there is no restriction on the amount of correspondence or language used. Correspondence is never read by facility staff unless the youth requests reading assistance, and correspondence is always opened in front of the youth to inspect for inappropriate contents, such as paper clips, staples, or pornography.
Will a board member move to vote on the requested variance? Thank you. I will now open the floor for debate, questions, conditions.
Yes. Could you speak to Children's Rights spoke earlier, and they said that ACS said that they were going to develop a policy for how they will determine when correspondence should be restricted for young people based on the safety or safety of the facility. Could you talk about where that policy is? And you do reference it.
Well, there is a protocol that exists that speaks to exactly when correspondence should be restricted based upon any existing court orders. I think, as we all understand, these are children, and it is important that we monitor who correspondence is coming from. And so, from that standpoint, the case managers help to establish that by reviewing existing court orders and being aware of any restrictions that might sort of pose a security risk or issue for the facility or for the youth, for that matter.
So you have the procedures. Are young people informed of that procedure?
This is very much a part of the ongoing dialogue between the youth and their case manager. This is something that they discuss openly, and the family is included in these discussions as well.
Thank
you. There are no conditions that we were recommending to add to this variance. The last condition was fulfilled by installing the mailboxes and checking the mailboxes.
So if there are no further comments or questions, we'll move to a vote on the variance. Dr. Safir, Perino, Hernandez, Richards.
Support.
Hamel. Cohen.
Abstain. I find the restriction on correspondence violates many fundamental feelings I have. Even I was 16 and I was away from home. So but I've heard from experts in this field that it's the right thing to do. I'm going to abstain from this vote.
Yes. And I vote yes. So by a vote of 7, 0 against, and 1 abstention, the variance is approved. And we'll move to the 4th variance request.
The nursery? On January 8th of 2019, BOC renewed a 6-month limited variance to minimum standard section 3016E5 to allow DOC to house pre-RTA youth in a facility that does not have necessary child care and a nursery program for youth who give birth while in custody. This variance contains several conditions, including that DOC notify the board in writing within 3 business days of each pregnant youth admitted to Horizon, and that agencies maintain appropriate placements outside of the facility where youth could be placed with their children. The prior approval from July 10th, 2018 also required DOC to submit a written plan to BOC by the October 2018 board meeting regarding the wraparound support services ACS would provide. DOC submitted the nursery plan at the October board meeting. ACS and DOC have a protocol in place to alert BOC of the admission of a pregnant girl within 3 business days while preserving the youth's right to confidentiality. There have been 2 pregnant young women admitted to Horizon since October. Despite unanticipated delays, ACS is in the final stages of the procurement process for a vendor to provide wraparound services for pregnant and parenting mothers and fathers, specifically for ACS's juvenile justice populations. This new contract is due to begin on July 1st of 2019. This portfolio of portable parenting services is designed to afford an individualized wraparound model of support to pregnant youth and all young mothers and fathers detained at the facility, and then follow the youth back to the community or other settings when he or she is released from Horizon. These services will include nurse-family partnership, parent coaching, a fatherhood program, teen choice sexuality education, and consultation. Based on both the ACS and DOC data and our first 9 months of experience, it is extremely unlikely that a pregnant 16 or 17-year-old will remain detained through to delivery. To date, there have only been 2 pre-RTA youth admitted to Horizon who were pregnant, both of whom were discharged before their due date. We referred both of these young people to the nurse-family partnership. It is if a late-term pregnant youth is admitted, ACS will make an individualized assessment to determine the best interest of the baby once the child is born.
Will a board member move to vote on the requested variance? Thank you. Second? Okay. I'll open the floor for debate, questions, conditions.
Yeah, I don't understand the logic of the ACS position. I mean, someone comes in 5 days before expected date of delivery. Just that because it hasn't happened doesn't mean that it's likely to happen. You know, it's not likely to happen, but it could happen, and your planning should be based upon that it could happen. So I'm disappointed that there's not a clear program in place for what you would do in the event that a woman was just about to deliver, and provide. You know, you could say we're going to provide nursery services here, or we're going to keep the mother and the child together in all kinds of things. But rather than to say that it's not worth figuring it out because it's unlikely to happen, I don't think is adequate. And we'll have some more discussion. I may propose a condition to try to address that. But the contract you described that you hope to be effective July 1st does not include. You did mention it include nursery services.
Not nursery services for within the facility, but we do have, as you're well aware, we have comprehensive medical care 24/7
no,
at
know,
the
but
facility.
But you have to have nursery services.
Yeah, no. They're not nursery services, and I think
that that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't missing that you had that.
I would just sort of state that while I think we could all agree that it is very unlikely that such a thing were to occur, that a young woman would come to us so late in her term that she would give birth at the facility or while in our custody. We understand that the possibility does exist. And so it is not as if we are turning our back to that possibility. In fact, we think that while unlikely, such a situation would really call for an individualized approach to figuring out exactly what the right thing to do is. And sort of creating a nursery in the facility, in what we understand is a limited physical space and not the place where we want babies. So we would try very hard, working with all of the parties, the young woman, her family, the courts, and everyone else involved, in order to come up with some sort of an individualized set of conditions and an individualized plan that would meet the needs of that baby and that mom, and that whatever security conditions brought the court to decide that a 9-month pregnant young woman needs to be in a locked facility. We would do everything that we could to provide for all of the, the public safety and individual safety issues that would be associated with such a case. But we are just not of the opinion that creating a nursery within a secure detention facility is the environment that we want. And we believe that we could do it other ways.
I'm sorry. I'm going to yield to Fran one second, but I just want to say, it is not I do not think it's appropriate to say we will figure out what is best for the needs of the child and what is best for the needs of the mother. The priority and the law here is that the mother and the child should be kept together. And that's the way. You might find exceptions to that, but absent exceptions, that is the, and whether it be at Horizon or someplace else is not of concern to me. Sorry.
You know, I got to say, I'm in agreement with Bobby. It's foolish to try to reinvent the wheel. Corrections Department has done an amazing job. And being a chief overseeing Rosem Singer, that's one of the things I was most proud of. Every time I would tour at night, I would see the mothers with their children, and it made me feel good. And to be in corrections and sometimes feel good, it's actually a nice thing. And I think to take that away, I can't support it either. I didn't the first time. But I think it's something that it's worth the effort. I think it's worth finding a space, and one day you're gonna be in a situation where you're gonna need it, because there's no such thing as it's not gonna happen in this kind of setting, because we're in New York City, everything happens, and I think we should be prepared, and I understand it's time to pull out soon, and we're not gonna have this situation probably here much longer, but until we do, I think we should prepare for something that does work, and something that's been very effective throughout the years, and something that we could actually, as corrections, be very proud of, that, this compassionate side where mothers and children are kept together and aren't separated. And even though it hasn't happened, there's going to come a time it will happen. And when we say, well, what about this? They're going to say, well, the board approved it, so we don't have to do it. And I don't want to just be a part of that. So I'm going to support with Bobby.
I just need clarification. I just want to make sure. As I read the variance, as I've thought about it before, it's not the situation where you are seeking to separate mother from child. Just at the present time, you do not have a facility within the detention center that would accommodate a young person and a child. It's not that you would separate the two. You would just seek to find another place where the child and the mother could reside together.
That's correct, and I would remind the board that as ACS is the city's child welfare agency as well, and we have relationships with many well-established mother-child programs across the city that can accommodate these very situations. And so it is with those partners that we would work very closely to develop the right plan for the mother and the child.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I look at it from a little bit different perspective as a family court judge. My experience with ACS is when we had teens that were pregnant and getting ready to parent, you all did make your absolute best efforts to keep that mother and child together, whether it be in that foster home or whether it be transferred to the mother-child program. So I trust that you'll do that here. Also, being at Horizons, it's primarily a male facility. There's been very few girls there as it is. And so I can understand why you might not want to spend the time, the resources, and actually use any space in the facility. My other perspective, which may be a little bit different, is having been a judge and having to decide where many people are housed during pendency of proceedings. I actually think by having a nursery there, it would make it easier for judges to let the young woman stay there and give birth, which isn't, to me, the more appropriate setting for that young woman and the baby. And if there isn't a nursery there, then I think judges, speaking for my colleagues, will probably work harder to release the child into ACS's custody for a mother-child program or something else. So I can support your variance, notwithstanding some of the concerns.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a question. Are you aiming to have a plan? Because it's not clear to me. is there going to be a plan for what inevitably will happen?
We will have a contracted package of services designed specifically for young parents and people who are getting ready to become parents. And those services will be available under contract just for the juvenile justice system through a contract that will be in place as of July 1st. We already, through this child welfare side of our agency, have an array of mother-child and of services of this sort. What we are creating is a specialized package of those services exclusively for our juvenile justice population.
So if tomorrow a young woman comes to you pregnant and gives birth earlier than you might project, where would she go with her baby? That's the question I'm asking. What will happen? What will happen when this happens?
Well, I think that what we would do would be to work with our existing partners in the child welfare community, with whom we have existing contracts for residential programs for mothers and their babies. And that is the resource direction we would move in order to create something and draw the young woman and her baby into that kind of a setting.
I think you were asking the question that I was actually thinking about. I don't think that an agency should be in a position to say that it's highly improbable that something won't happen.
Right.
That's not to say that I won't support the variance, but I do think that you have to have some kind of contingency. When I'm not here in years, let's suppose that the crime is so severe that the person, the individual who is mandated to secure detention, then what would be your recourse with the court in being able to remedy it?
Again, I think that what we would work very hard to do would be to address the public safety concerns that the court has an obligation to address through operational strategies with additional staffing, perhaps creating some specialized setting within an existing program where we already have a contract.
Let me ask my question differently.
Right.
What is going to be ACS's role with the courts when a child or a young mother in this instance is...
I'm sorry, what is ACS's
role?
Role?
Role with the courts. When you have a situation, let's say, that you have to appeal to the judge to maybe to change the outcome of the decision that was made to put someone in secure detention.
Well, I mean, ultimately, these are judicial decisions.
I understand that.
Yeah, the young people are in our custody by judicial order, and it would require that the judge modify that order, and we would work with all of the parties to come up with a plan that the judge would find acceptable.
So you would interface with Corporation Counsel to go back to the court? Is that the way that it would work? I'm not sure.
I think that that's exactly what we would have to do, would be to engage Corp Counsel, the family, the attorney on both sides, in order to engage the court in a conversation about what the best course of action is in this scenario.
So I would say that I kind of agree with you that it's kind of implausible that this situation would happen. I think they would be handled within the courts and so on and so forth. Where I do believe that you have to have an answer for the worst case scenario somehow or another.
I think we need to know when we will have the answer, because there is no answer. It's spinning. We're just going in circles.
And I would encourage you, you said you have a range of providers, to be able to come to us and say, if we had a pregnant young person coming in, we would work with the courts to send this person to program X, program Y, like a real plan that's thought through, range of services, available, like the plan of what would happen if you had a young person.
Right. I mean, the contractors that we are working most closely with are associated with Children's Village. It's been around for a long time. And they're among the providers who we have engaged in this kind of a conversation. We're talking with them about the package of services that will be provided, and they operate some of the residential programs. They have recently joined with Inwood House, a longtime provider of these very services for the city, that have been operating under contract with ACS for many years. These are the resources that are at our disposal and that we have engaged in these conversations and would continue and will continue to, because it is with them that we are contracting for the package of services that I've described, and also would work with for any eventuality should we need the services of that contractor for a residential component.
Thank you.
There was just one other thing that I wanted to say, because I think all the questions that are being asked are terrific. And I also thought about what if it's really serious charges, but I think it's important that everybody on the board and the public be aware that when a young woman is pregnant and giving birth, whether they were housed at Rikers or whether they're in detention, because ACS is the child welfare agency, they actually have the authority to remove that baby and not allow that baby to go home. I know ACS may not want to say that right now, but that's the fact of the matter. So we've had this incredible nursery out at Rikers, and I was one of the many board members that were complaining that the babies were being removed from the mothers, and notwithstanding having a beautiful nursery, the women couldn't go in the nursery with the babies because ACS had made it determined that the child's life and health would be at issue. So the more serious the charges, like murder charges, the more likely ACS would find that that baby's at risk, even if the baby's in a detention facility or in Rikers, and would more likely be removed. So again, I go back, I realize it sounds illogical to many of you, but I think the mother and child actually have a better chance of staying together if there is no nursery. Not that I wouldn't like to see a nursery there, but if there's serious charges, ACS has the authority to go in and remove the child. They have to bring the case to court, and the court has to decide whether that baby's coming into foster care or being placed on an order of custody or guardianship temporarily with another family member. So these are all terrific questions. I'm not disputing anything my colleagues are saying, but there's other reasons that that baby would not wind up in the nursery.
So we have a proposed condition that speaks to some of the concerns regarding the articulation of a specific plan. Martha, do you want to read the proposed condition?
This was just drafted. Within 1 month, DOC will provide the board with a specific plan for assuring that mother and their newborn will be kept together in a safe, nurturing place.
So
I propose that. Can I speak to it, or how do you want to
well, we're going to propose it. We're going to move to vote on it.
Okay.
And is there a second?
Second.
Okay. And will ACS, DOC comment on the proposed condition?
Can you read it again?
Within 1 month, DOC will provide the board with a specific plan for assuring that mother and their newborn will be kept together in a safe, nurturing place.
I don't think that's what I was saying. And I agree with the judge that there can be circumstances in which the kid would not be kept with the mother. So I don't think I totally agree with it, and just maybe needs a friendly amendment, even to that amendment.
But that could happen irregardless, right? I mean, the judge can intervene or others can intervene. We need a plan for the regular.
Right, and it would need some language absent a finding of imminent risk to the child's life.
Right. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Pursuant to a court order. They don't have the authority to do that.
But
Put that
Yes,
in.
but I agree in
Right. It should have some
needs to be further amended.
It should have some modification related to that, but there needs to be a clear practice, as there is on Rikers Island right now, that the mother and the child will not be separated. And this could not be based upon goodwill, because that was the case until litigation was brought to require that a nursery be established. And can I just finish one more thing? You know,
Excuse me.
I didn't finish my. That ACS's role in this process of having mothers and separated from their children has been on the side of separating mothers from children over the past 30 years. And they may have a different position on it right now, but to rely on ACS rather than a policy which says that it is in the interest of the Board of Corrections with certain circumstances that are exceptions that mothers and their children be kept together. I think we can't rely on ACS to do the right thing.
So,
oh, sorry.
I just want to say, I hear what you're saying. ACS through the years has taken some strides to work to keep children with their mothers. ACS, has worked to keep children of incarcerated parents connected to their parents. And so I do think that is, I think you're just going a little too far here. But I'm also curious as to why the requirements that have been attached to the variance, which seem to be as specific as the one that you're suggesting, are not sufficient at this point. I don't really see how what you've written here, really, I mean, it's a different choice of words, but I don't see how it really is significantly different from what has been, would have been the conditions that have been imposed, the requirements on the variance heretofore. DOC 1, DOC shall notify the board in writing of each admission of a pregnant youth to a facility within 3 business days of such admission, and such notification shall include a description of the steps to be taken to seek her transfer to a facility where she can reside with her baby. 2,
But we haven't heard that yet. I mean, they haven't done
DOC shall ensure that the agencies maintain appropriate placements outside of the SSD facility for pregnant and parenting girls where these youth could be placed without being separated from their children.
So in response, it's 6 months later and we don't have those. That has not been done. There is no plan to what's going to be done in the event, and so that's why I was proposing it. I was saying.
So number 1 is prospective, right? In the event that something happens, right? What you're saying is that number 2, that they don't have agencies at this particular point that they're working with. Is that true?
No, they clearly have agencies that they're working with. But to keep the mother and child together, that is not. I haven't heard that. I actually only hear that they're going to do what's best for the mother and the child. If there's not a commitment to keep the mother and child together, either in the facility or in some other facility.
Well, he did say Children's Village is the agency that they're working with. Is it? You said Children's Village and Inwood are the 2 agencies you've talked to, and they're under contract with ACS?
Services and have for many years.
And in the event that a young person came in, you would contact those agencies, work with the courts to ensure that they can go. Do those 2 variances get back? These 2. Steve, do these?
May I suggest that maybe we take a 5-minute break so that way we could all respectively caucus amongst ourselves?
Well, I think we are.
Okay.
We will be able within a few moments to suggest a modified additional language for one of the existing conditions.
And is it possible that we at least have an opportunity to see the proposed conditions before so we have a chance to be able to speak with, so ACS and DOC can speak together, and because this is the first time we're hearing about this, and it might be productive for us to be able to read this and then understand what the department and ACS's position would be and how to formulate a response. It's a little awkward to be able to
Sure.
see something now. And
This is, Bobby's withdrawing this
Oh,
condition.
okay.
So the
Very
condition
good.
is
Okay.
withdrawn.
Very good, thank you.
Jackie?
Yeah.
I actually agree with Jennifer. I'm comfortable with the language. What I was really suggesting was that, because I was in government a long time, you always have to expect the unexpected, that there at least some articulation of what would be done if we ever get into a situation that's so severe that something has to be done about the woman giving birth in the facility. And the only assurance that I would need, having run Horizon, is that someone has the authority to go back to the courts and be able to appeal to the judge to be able to change the detention, the mandated detention, which I think.
I believe that authority
Huh?
exists.
Yeah, it does. I think
Yes.
this was Corporation Counsel, the juvenile division. Wouldn't that be?
I would just like to say that I think we all share in sort of how agonizing this is. This is just a terribly imperfect sort of world, and this is a piece of it. We would be happy to sit privately with members of the board and talk about this and go over all of the many issues and possibilities and eventualities that really come to play when we're talking about this kind of a scenario. So, we fully appreciate how delicate and sensitive and important this is. So we welcome the opportunity to engage in a real conversation outside of this public setting that would allow us to perhaps explore all of the range of possibilities that all of us might bring to the table. So it's an offer.
Why don't I read the existing conditions that are attached to the variance? There are two. One, DOC shall notify the board in writing of each admission of a pregnant youth to a facility within 3 business days of such admission, and such notification shall include a description of the steps to be taken to seek her transfer to a facility where she can reside with her baby. 2, DOC shall ensure that the agencies maintain appropriate placements outside of the SSD facility for pregnant and parenting girls where these youth could be placed without being separated from their children.
So will a member move to vote on the conditions? Second.
Second.
Any further comment on the conditions? Any further comment from the board on the conditions? So we'll move to a vote on the.
I have a question. I agree that as these are written, it speaks to what you're saying. My issue is I'd just like to hear a little bit more of where these mothers will go with their babies, as opposed to just hearing it's going to happen, because it's not that I don't trust you, it's I don't trust that kind of approach to something so important. So there has to be perhaps a presentation or something soon to hear where these kids will go with their little kids.
Okay.
I agree. I just think it's a little fuzzy. As I indicated, I will support the variance, and I do think that it's highly implausible that you get into the situation, but you never know. So I think for me, it would be helpful. I can vote on it, but it would be helpful to understand, for instance, what's the nexus between ACS and Corporation Counsel and Juvenile Justice? Who's involved in making the decision? At the end of the day, if you were in that situation.
Right, and we could share more information about our mother-child providers, the Inwood House, and some of you may not be familiar with all of what they do and their history. We would be happy to do that as well.
Would you be able to return to do that either in the upcoming July meeting or in an early fall meeting of the board?
Sure.
Well, perhaps one way to resolve this is to just shorten the time and make it a 2 or 3 month variance so that he can then return with all the information that my colleagues are asking. I don't know if that would be acceptable to you all or not. This is June. So
Just should be
July,
coupled
August,
with what we
September.
want to see.
3 months, sure,
Yeah.
yeah, very specific
Yeah,
about what
that's
we
good.
want to see. If that's acceptable.
I appreciate the point that you're making. I'm not certain that the issue is with the variance, but rather you want information, you want to be kept apprised, we want to be kept apprised, so I don't know if we have to shorten the variance if we're just going to be voting on it in another 3 months.
I would agree. I will leave the variance as is. We can vote on that, and we can have subsequent discussion about how this issue, I have a sore throat, by the way, how the issue would be handled, moving forward.
So just add the condition that you're going to present at the fall or July.
Okay, so I'm hearing a proposed condition that the city present more specific information regarding the provision of services for young mothers with their children.
Does that work for you?
Yes, we can do that. We would prefer to be able to do that at the fall board meeting, but that would be that's fine with us.
All right.
Take a vote for the 6
Yes.
months. If it doesn't pass, then I'll move it for 3 months, and then we'll take a vote then. But I'm not suggesting that you reduce to 3 months. I'm just trying to notice.
Do you want to vote on the time limit after the conditions, or would you like to do the time limit now? Okay, do the time limit now.
I do, before we go to vote, I do have one question. And this is having worked in government. You are actively working at these relationships with other agencies. Why do we need to wait until the fall for you to report out?
I think that the reality is that the package of the contract services are going to be in place as of July 1st. We'd like a little bit of time with those. We're also in the throes of the transition of our YDS staff at Horizon. It's consuming an enormous amount of our attention and energy, and if we could do this in the fall, it would be our preference.
So why don't we do this? How about an update on the contracts at the July meeting and a report in the fall? Does that work?
That's fine. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to vote on a condition that adds an update in July and a report in the fall.
Great.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Okay, Dr. Safier.
Support.
Perino.
I'll support the update.
Hernandez.
I support the full.
Richards.
Yeah.
Hamel.
Yes.
Yes. So by unanimous vote, the condition, that's additional condition, is approved. Now, we're going to move to a vote on the variance with the approved conditions. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Second.
Support. Do not support. Do not.
Support.
Support.
Yes.
Yes. By a vote of 7 in favor and 1 opposed, the variance is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is healthcare access. Thank you.
I'm going to dive right in. And I'm sorry we didn't get to this earlier in the agenda because it's critically important that we discuss all of this. Ensuring that the delivery of correctional health and mental health services are in compliance with its minimum standards is a critical part of the board's mission. Access is a fundamental policy and principle of the standards and of all nationally recognized standards, and is based upon long-standing legal opinion. Access to health and mental health care in New York City jails has been discussed at numerous meetings, 9 public board meetings since January 2016, and is the subject of our ongoing monitoring in the jails. Since 2016, the board has required CHS to produce a monthly access report monitoring each month's approximately 51,000 scheduled health and mental health visits, 10,000 sick call visits, 3,000 health intakes, and other health encounters at each of the DOC facilities. With the goal of better identifying and underlying With the goal of better identifying underlying barriers to access, the CHS monthly access reports represent the most comprehensive reporting on health and mental health care access in jails nationally. Yesterday, we released a summary of the monthly access reports for the calendar year 2018. I want to thank Heather Burgess, Nashla Rivas-Salas, and Emily Turner for their work to produce this critical report. The board's summary shows the following. In 2018, approximately 618,000 services were scheduled. 43% of those services were mental health services. 77% of the services scheduled during this year were, quote, completed. Completed is defined as the patient either saw the clinician or the patient refused and told the clinician that they did not want the scheduled service. Overall, service completion has decreased slightly from 79% in the July to December 2017 period to 77% in the more recent January 2018 reporting period. DOC's failure to produce patients to the clinic remained the main reason that patients missed appointments. However, there was also a slight decrease in the non-production of patients from 67 to 64% of the missed services. Completion rates, as you can imagine, vary by facility, ranging from a completion rate of 67% at Brooklyn Detention Center to a 93% completion rate at the North Infirmary Command. Completion rates also vary by category. For instance, dental and oral surgery appointments, mental health appointments, and on-island specialty clinic services were the least likely to be completed, with non-completion rates of 31%, 31%, and 27% respectively. As we've reported in the past and discussed, the highest number of missed appointments occurred in mental health services. Over 79,000 mental health appointments were missed last year. That's approximately 6 times as many missed appointments as any of the other service categories with the highest number of missed appointments. The board staff remain concerned about the high number and proportion of missed appointments, particularly the number and proportion of appointments that do not occur due to DOC not bringing the person to their appointment. While the agency's responses to the board's 2018 recommendations document limited initiatives to improve access to care, the responses suggest very little coordination between agencies to identify barriers to care or to problem solve together. For example, we know the agencies still have independent systems for tracking whether someone was brought to an appointment, and if they were not, why they were not. This leads to the agencies producing conflicting numbers, conflicting reports, and conflicting explanations as to why people do not get to the clinic. And obviously that makes it very difficult to understand the problem and solve for it. For example, in March 2019, Correctional Health reported there were 50,746 scheduled services and 10,423 completed sick call encounters. At the same time, DOC reported that there were 48,812 scheduled services and 7,136 completed sick call encounters. That obviously is a difference in reporting of nearly 2,000 scheduled services and over 500 sick call encounters, and that was in 1 month alone. Causing further concern, we know that more than half of the complaints received by both agencies separately are related to access to care. While the board recognizes the inherent benefits and the inherent challenges of 2 agencies working together to ensure access to quality health care, collective problem solving and collaboration is the only way that people in jail will receive the care that clinicians have said that they need. The board is enhancing its capacity to monitor compliance with the minimum standards on health and mental health care, and now has a dedicated research director who will work closely with DOC and CHS to improve access to care. And with that opening, we now ask that Correctional Health and DOC present on their efforts to improve access to care, and in particular to talk about how the initiatives you're working on will show an impact on the access indicators and in the patterns of complaints that we all are aware of. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I do want to point out that the electronic health record remains...
Maybe introduce yourself.
Sure.
Thanks.
I'm Ben Farber, Correctional Health Services Chief of Staff. With regard to the access report, So our electronic health record remains the comprehensive and sole source of our data, whether we're looking at sick call or completed visits. I do want to point out that we have, consistently maintained our cohort housing for both diabetic patients and geriatric patients, and that definitely speaks to our commitment for access to patients and delivering services. We have those both at NIC and AMKC. Happy to let the departments speak about their initiatives as well.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Faisal Yusuf. I'm the Assistant Commissioner for Health Affairs. So, thank you, Ben. So what I want to say is that the department is wholly committed to ensuring the accuracy in our data collection, as well as timely production of patients for their health and mental health services. The Health Affairs Division continually tracks, monitors, and produces informative reports that further assist in the department's effort to improve the number of individuals afforded medical care. The Health Affairs Division reports better informed department leadership and facility staff members where there are areas for improvements. The department continues to track production and non-production for scheduled medical appointments. The department is committed to coming into compliance with the minimum standards and working towards fully affording sick call to all housing areas. There was an increase in an average of a percentage of housing areas system-wide being afforded sick call when comparing to January 2018 through April 2019. In 2018, we afforded approximately 85% of sick call to all housing areas. In 2019, same time frame, we were up to approximately 91%. So there was some improvement in terms of access to sick call. There are somewhat initiatives that the department embarked on in collaboration with our CHS colleagues. In the past year, the department opened a mini clinic in AMKC that allowed for increased number of patients to be afforded access to services, and that was in the south side. We call that a south side AMKC clinic. Prior to that clinic being open, only approximately 50% of housing areas were afforded sick call. Post opening of that housing area, that number went up to about 79% of housing areas at AMKC specifically being afforded sick call. So there are some significant improvements in AMKC. Is that where we want to be? The answer is no, but we continue to collaborate with our CHS partners to look at options, initiatives, et cetera, in terms of affording access to care. There are a couple other things that we actually worked on with our CHS colleagues, and that is to make sure that all of our budgeted posts in the mental health areas, whether it's escort or steady officers, that those officer posts were filled with steady officers. And how does that help us? It makes sure that if the officers are steady, they understand the process, they understand the routine, they understand the importance of getting patients to their services. So the department has moved in that direction in ensuring that we have steady officers in those areas. Another area that we actually work very closely with our partners in CHS is actually having daily huddles. And what is that daily huddle? It's a meeting that takes place every day where uniformed, the officers that work in the clinic, the deputy wardens, health affairs, and CHS frontline, and sometimes their senior management staff would attend. And in those meetings, we actually discuss access to health care. access to service. What are we doing good? What are we doing not so good? What could we do differently to improve and to better access to care? So we're dealing with it in a just-in-time manner on a daily basis in the front lines where all of the staff, leadership staffs are there to address those concerns. Another initiative that we actually embarked on was at Bellevue, where we jointly found out that there was limitations in terms of the holding pens at Bellevue. And because of security reasons, only a limited number of inmates could be taken there at the same time. So we worked collaboratively together to renovate those holding pens over at Bellevue. And that construction work is going to be starting sometime in August with a completion in the first quarter of 2020. And once that is completed, we would be able to allow much more patients securely being transported and in the holding pens at Bellevue for their services. The department also has actually started using has been constantly reinforcing the usage of the inmate tracking system. And we're doing that so that we can actually track and monitor patients that are produced to the clinic. We can see when they come in, when they leave, whether they're afforded their access to the clinic. It's our electronic way of saying, yes, we are producing patients, and if we're not, we could find out very quickly that a patient was not produced.
You ready for questions? Or?
Yes, thanks.
I have some specific.
Could you, for the longest, we've really been sort of asking, what are you doing to increase the completions or scene rates for off-Allen specialty clinics? And it seems like we went from 60% to 67% of missed appointments for off-Allen specialty clinics. And if you go to nursing and oral dental, it's like 60 to 70%. And it seems like some of our most expensive resources, if these appointments are scheduled, they're scheduled because the primary care identified some critical medical issue that needs to get addressed and that the Allen doesn't have the capacity to deal with. But yet we still just can't get folks seen. And it's tying up, physicians' time, it's tying up administrative time, trying to coordinate all of this. How can we break this? And what are you doing to break it? Because it looks like it's heading in the wrong direction.
Actually, I alluded earlier about the pens over at Bellevue hospitals. Currently, there are 2 holding pens over at Bellevue. And because of security concerns, the multitude of inmates that have to go there, that's not sufficient to house the number of inmates that have to be transferred there. So that's why when we worked with our CHS partners, that was an area that we identified that needed to be changed, where those pens need to be constructed in smaller holding pens so that we could house more or take more inmates there at any given time. Once that construction is completed, you will definitely see an improvement of the number of patients that are afforded their access to specialty clinics.
And that's happening now?
That is scheduled to come and start in August of this year.
Perfect.
Okay, being a young captain, if someone doesn't go to the clinic, you automatically get respond to the area. And I can say, being a captain for 6 years, there's never been a time I couldn't convince a detainee not to go to the clinic. There's never been a time. But I always made the effort, I always went, and I made sure that this person particularly went. And we have 8 facilities that are doing the same thing. Are there facilities that are actually being, it's working well? I mean, are teams actually doing it well, better than other teams? And if that's the case, can we get together and share the wealth? What are these teams particularly doing? Because I happen to know that, a lot of times people feel, this is my facility, don't tell me what to do. And yet some facilities are succeeding, yet others are failing. So getting, people to the clinic, getting people to specialty clinics, this is all controllable. And you have to do it early in the day. You can't do it as, the horse went out the barn. So there's got to be a plan every morning to get people out. So I guess my first question is, are the facilities doing it better? And if that's the case, are they going to other facilities and saying, hey, listen, it's working for us. This is what we're doing.
So thank you for your question. As you know, I've done many of the things that you did as a young captain when I was a young captain. So yes, obviously we have multiple facilities, so there are facilities that are better than others. As Faisal pointed out, the increasing of steady staff, whether it be clinic staff, the clinic supervisor, or even housing area supervisors, is important in being able to establish that rapport with the inmate population to get them down to the clinic. That isn't always successful. And so when it isn't successful, we do try to, we're working with CHS to come up with ways to get our most vulnerable inmate population down to the clinic, those that are in need of greater services. And we do share. So we spoke about, Faisal spoke about the morning huddles and what is happening that day. Who is it that needs to be seen? What are challenges that they can expect based on either volume or scheduling for that day are discussed in those meetings, which I know that you're aware of, since at RNDC is a place where that occurred, and you are familiar with that process. So a place like AMKC, with the population that they have, we have, as Faisal pointed out, opened up a new clinic, dedicated additional resources. Obviously, whenever we deliver any service or any program, safety is of paramount, is the most important thing. And so we did see a need to not only increase production, but do it in a safe manner, to have an additional clinic at AMKC. We've been able to establish that. And as Faisal also pointed out, and you brought up in your question, when we talk about specialty clinics, as Faisal pointed out, we only had 2 pens, and so we've devised a plan that has since been approved by the SCOC so that we can begin constructing the additional pens that we'll need so that we can create the separations that we need based on classification when we do produce inmates to specialty clinics at Bellevue Hospital. So I just want to really reiterate that the number one thing that we both, and I'll speak for, this is the one thing that I will speak for CHS, is that we're constantly looking for ways to collaborate and figure out ways to do things better. I know that in the past, as was presented in the opening statement, that may not always have been the case, but we are committed to working together, moving forward, as we have begun to do in the last year, to provide services to our inmate population in a safe manner and in a way that accomplishes the mission of both our agencies. So thank you.
Right. No, I do appreciate things being safe, and that's our earlier conversation with the cell doors and you having to fix them because it's, it's an issue with RNDC. I know you're committed to safety, and I appreciate that. But my concern is, like, this is since the beginning of time, like trying to get people down to the clinic, and it seems like back in the day, it's almost like something you had to do, and it's like it's important. Some people will get it done, because there's a sense of urgency, and others are like, oh, okay, well, it didn't get done. So I think at this point there's a real sense of urgency with it. I think people need to go down, and I know it's a committed team. There's a committed team here, and I would like to see, like, plans in effect to change. Like, if we keep on doing the same things, expect different results, that's, what the definition of insanity. So I think it's important that the huddles, I think, is a great idea. And it's obviously, probably some people are more committed to the huddles than others. And then you find out what motivates those people to do well in some facilities where other facilities might be falling by the wayside. That's what I'm saying, because it's, even though there's maybe 8 major facilities, it's really one department. And there's a lot of talent in this department. It's just so we just got to hone it together and focus and fix this problem that's been around for a while. It just didn't happen yesterday.
And you did it in VCBC on the report. You went from like 67% to 80%, 15,000 to 33,000 completions. So what Chief Perino is saying is absolutely, you did it.
So thank you for bringing that up. So there was a concept that we introduced at VCBC, which we are actually duplicating in some other facilities, which is actually minimizing the downtime within the facility. If you work in the jails, you will know at the change of time, changes of a shift, usually that's usually a considered downtime. So what we've done, we've actually getting our officers now to bring down more patients before the change of shift, so that when CHS staff comes into work, they have patients readily available to start seeing.
Great
I think
strategy.
about the capacity within the clinics to do a lot more. The problem is that we're looking a year after this first report
and not seeing improvement. I'm not going to ask a question, but the notion that the problem at Bellevue right now is that you don't have an extra, what's gone on for the past 25 years? I mean, it's more than you're saying, and it has to do with who's being brought there, who's not being brought there, whether or not people who have higher security statuses are not being allowed to be housed with people with lower security statuses. It is a correctional modification of its procedures, which is limiting access to this thing. And you only use the clinics at Bellevue half-time. You don't have them all, 5 days a week, 2 sessions. There's lots of clinic space there. There's lots of space to house people. We should find a name for that. A place where you're locally housing people while they're waiting, and you're only using it half the time. So this is not the reason why it's not working. It's not working because you're not making it work. And you have the capacity in terms of space at Bellevue. You have the capacity in terms of putting people in pens at Bellevue, and you're not doing it. Also like to say that the notion that your computers are capturing everything is true or not true, but you're not capturing stuff that you don't want to know about. CHS, you're not capturing the requests for sick call because those requests do not go into your computer system. So all the people who ask to be seen in sick call each day, you don't know about it, you don't want to know about it, and we know, based upon our reporting and DOC's reporting, that lots and lots of those people are never getting to the clinic. So as you develop your new computer system, I hope that you will change your sort of intransigent position on this and put people into the system at the time that they request care. Because right now you are deliberately preventing yourself from knowing who is asking to see you. The most fundamental access question in correctional health care is when someone asks to see you, and it is the current position of the correctional health services that we don't want to know who that is. It'll just work out because our systems are so great and we don't need to know who the person is because of some population-based system. I hope that you change that. I don't think you're planning on doing it right now. But
What happens to, don't people fill out sick call slips? Aren't those slips the documentation that someone requested?
It's not an individual slip. Each housing area has a sick call list that's posted the day before, and that's where the inmates actually signed up for their sick call who wants to go to sick call the next day.
And does
So
CHS get that information?
a copy of that list is given to each clinic.
And CHS, do you put it in your computer system?
So our electronic health record only reflects the encounters that we're seeing directly with patients.
So if someone requested sick call and they didn't get to you, you don't know that they requested it?
Well, our record system is only capturing the patients that we see.
Did that mean that you don't know it? Come on.
So you're collecting the sick call list.
From a clinic management perspective, we're aware when lists are provided to us, but our system is only capturing the clinical information for patients that we see.
And you don't want, I mean, you're not looking at the list of people who are not seen and saying, bring us these people. You're not entering into the system people who want to be seen. Say yes, since it's true.
You have no idea.
So we have robust,
Hi, Patsy Yang,
Hi, Patsy.
Senior Vice President for Correctional Health Services. It is not true that we don't care.
I said you don't know. Yeah. If I said I don't care, I believe you don't. I believe you care.
The request and the minimum standards are that anybody who is asking to see us through sick call is brought by DOC. And we do insist on that.
But that's tautological, Patsy. You know that so many of these people are not brought. So you cannot say everybody who signs up for sick call is brought to us, because you know they're not brought, and you don't want to know that who has signed up.
So how do we know how do you get to the completion rates if you're not putting in the baseline of who's requesting?
They don't have completion rates.
Okay, so I'll just talk a little about the operation. Okay, even though people sign the day before, sometimes they wake up, they feel better. And when a sick call is announced, just because you didn't sign up for sick call, the department has the obligation to take you down to sick call. You know, so it's even though you're not on that list, the department will take the individual down to sick call. So a lot of times people just sign the list because they sign everything. And there are other times when they can't get through the list because the clinic is crowded. So it's a two-edged sword. But just to put clarity to what happens during a sick call, even though you sign that list or you don't sign that list, when it's announced that day and someone's not feeling good, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Deputy Commissioner, you know, and you know, they're going to take them. So, you know, they're going to go down.
That's happening. That's clearly happening. I'm not concerned with people who express emergencies and want to be taken down. I'm not concerned with DOC not identifying people who aren't even aware that they're having an emergency. They worry about them and bring them down. But what I'm concerned about is anybody who says, I want to go to sick call and is not brought down, and the CHS does not know that someone has signed up to come down. They haven't come down because they haven't been brought, because the system is defective right now. And CHS does not want to, whether they care or not, they don't want to know who is requesting sick call right now. And it's been we've been discussing this for a long time. I hope that that Correctional Health Services and Health and Hospitals changes its mind, because it's very fundamental to care. I also think it's important that your plan of changing your information system, and I understand that you have to do that because ECW is disappearing as an EMR, that you've said that because of that you're not going to provide us with basic information about who's receiving health care in terms of the monthly reports that the board has requested until next year. And I would hope that you would know what your own services are doing, that you're not going to wait 6 months to have the same managerial data that you need to run your program and ask why you don't provide us with the same data.
We did not say that we would stop reporting.
You said we wouldn't receive it till next year.
We're unable to during the transition from one system to another in our entire service.
Are you not going to have information regarding management of your system during this period?
We intend to have that.
So why not give that to us, which is what we're asking for?
Developing and writing the reports is taking a longer time and has to wait until after we've migrated all of our clinics and programs.
So you're going to be getting reports, though?
You will get reports when we get reports.
So not to wait till next year?
We have not started writing what needs to be done to generate reports for you. We're in the process of crafting, migrating, and refining our new electronic record system.
Okay, well, but the reports that you're getting to see that your programs are working, we'll have access to as well?
We will, and we will report them to you.
Okay. In your letters, in your response to our report, you said there was going to be a substantial delay in receiving reports.
It's the delay due to the migration from one electronic health record to another. It's not easy to do. It's a complicated thing. We don't want to disrupt patient care. We need information every moment without stepping a beat.
Well, the information you want is the information we want, so I don't understand why there's a... So you said there's going to be a delay. If there won't be, that'd be great.
There will be a delay because we can't do all of it at the same time. Safely migrating from one electronic health record system to another is the priority. Reporting the data afterward is the second priority.
We agree with that. We just want to receive you're going to require data to understand your own management. You're not going to have a delay of 6 months on that. We just want to receive the same data that you have so we can understand that persons living in DOC custody are receiving care.
that's our goal. That's why we are.
So just getting back to the sick call, the 9,500 sick call visits is not how many people signed up, it's how many people actually got to the sick call.
Correct. And there's recently been, I think you're aware, working with City Council, there's been a new bill that's just passed where DOC it's codified that DOC will offer a sick call to all housing units.
Which is already required in our standards. That's not a new,
And
that's
so
not a change.
does DOC keep a baseline of like how many people requested? What do y'all do with those sheets?
No.
No, we do not keep a baseline of the number. We keep track of the housing areas that were afforded sick call from each facility on a daily basis.
The gentleman that was speaking about the medical electronic record, you're from Health Services, from Correctional Health Services?
Yes, from Correctional Health.
So is that like a clinical management record that you're talking about? So you're talking really about patient care, right? In that electronic record?
So our electronic health record both captures clinical information as well as clinic management information so that we can deliver care appropriately.
Which one is it?
We're using Fusion Centricity.
Okay. So you're essentially, if I follow what you're essentially saying that once you get the detainee or the patient, whatever you refer to him as, that then you have a record of that individual going forward, right? So you don't have a way of capturing whether or not people that wanted to report for sick leave made it or not. That's really corrections responsibility?
That's correct. We have the record when they are seen and we complete that service.
Okay. Are there any, I really don't know this, are there any milestones that have to be provided for all detainees vis-a-vis healthcare? Is there, like, for instance, a timeline for a medical exam? Does everyone get a medical exam? A mental health exam? I would guess that's not standardized. Is that more individualized? How does it work?
Well, the admission process and medical intake occur for all individuals and are offered for them, and a comprehensive care plan is developed. Follow-up care is scheduled as appropriate, whether that's a referral to mental health or a future medical follow-up visit.
Okay.
So Stanley, I know, thanks for your line of questioning around the sick call documentation. I think it's been an ongoing discussion between the three agencies, and we have not reached any type of acceptable resolution at all. It is, I find it completely unacceptable that we cannot know who is requesting to get down to the doctor and who is not able to.
And maybe with this new system, I know DOC is transitioning to a new sort of detainee management system. It's not
No.
the system. It's,
Can have it on a piece of paper?
well, they do, right?
But they don't want to,
So we should talk about a way we could perhaps resolve it. I don't.
So I just to summarize, because I feel like there are a lot of different conversations happening at one and a lot of different topics. Thank you, former Chief Perino, for your explanation, excuse me, of the sick call process. That is accurate. The list is generated. It is a copy is given to CHS. If someone, when sick call is announced in the housing area, someone wants to go down to sick call, they are allowed, no one is denied the ability to go down to the clinic and to see a doctor because they weren't on the list. If an individual who signed up for access to sick call decides that, as former Chief Perino said, they had a headache yesterday and they wanted to go down, and they decided at the time the sick call is announced, not to go down to the clinic, we would not force them to go down to the clinic. And to speak to the system, it is not a system. You are correct. The list is paper-based. However, I believe that the system that you all are referring to is an internal DOC inmate tracking system, which we use. It is RFID-based, and it tracks movement from point A to point B, and we can track duration. And so we are leveraging that system of ours to specifically track individuals who come to the clinic and when they come in and when they exit. And so we have made a concerted effort to install the system in multiple areas in all of our clinics, and we are actively looking to increase training for staff and get a better understanding, get better information in terms of those individuals that are produced at our clinic. So when I spoke before about working collaboratively with CHS has an EMR, ECW, or whatever it is, where they track inmate patient care. We track a totally different set, so we are more concerned with the actual movement of the individual down to the clinic and making sure that our data sets, even though they are different, that to the extent that is possible, that they match up, and that if somebody does have a clinic appointment, whether it be specialty or otherwise, that they are in the clinic.
I'd like to hear more, not for this meeting, but I'd like to hear more about it, because that sounds like you are working toward.
Well, they're not working towards a common system. They're agreeing that we're just going to have different numbers. We're not going to look at the individual who seeks care. We'll talk about this more, but it is very disappointing to me that the departments are not have a unified system that recognizes that the element here is a person seeking care, and the answer is that they get it. And I'm not. It's not about you. I'm not. No,
I understand. I understand, Mr. Cohen.
I'm not talking about you.
I understand. I'm not taking it. I know. I'm not taking it personally, Mr. Cohen. And I would just like to add that while I understand what it is that you would like to see, I think that the overarching point that both CHS and DOC would like to make is that we are committed to working together to provide services to our inmate population and those that are committed to our care. And so to that extent, we will continue to collaborate, and I'd be willing to speak with you and discuss our inmate tracking system and how it works in our environment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think, as you've heard, we will continue to follow up on this, and we will look forward to hearing more about your collaboration. And if it's not through a single EHR, through another mechanism, understanding how you are documenting that work together moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to move to public comment. And public comment will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker. As usual, the iPad on the stage will tell you the time left. I will let you know when your time has run out. In addition to, or instead of your oral testimony, we're happy to receive lengthier written comment. We also take phone calls, letters, emails, and website form submissions. First on the list is Kayla Simpson.
Good morning. I'm Kayla Simpson. I'm a staff attorney at the Prisoners' Rights Project at the Legal Aid Society. Welcome, Board Member Hernandez, and congratulations, Chair.
Thanks.
I want to say 2 words about topics on behalf of our clients who can't be here today to rebut the things that you hear from the city agencies, because if our clients were here, what they would tell you is that they contact our office and other advocates literally every single day about access to health care. It is far and away the most common complaint that we send to the Department of Correctional Health, which I'm sure they could confirm to you. And the board's reporting posted yesterday reflects that reality. And as Martha said, just highlighting, 64% of missed appointments due to DOC not producing someone, that mental health is one of the 3 services least likely to be completed, very troubling in a correctional context. And almost 1/4 of appointments are just not completed. That would never be acceptable to me in the community if every 4th time I tried to see my doctor, I was just not able to get there for a reason outside of my control. It is completely unacceptable that the department and CHS cannot coordinate to solve the problems of clients not making it to appointments. It's unacceptable. These justifications are unacceptable. In the meantime, our clients will continue to call us every day requesting that their infected wounds be cleaned, making a 5th request for dental care, or asking to start mental health treatment, asking for medication, asking to meet with a specialist. Unacceptable. At a time, especially when the average daily population is this low, there can be no excuse for a city agency to serve as such a consistent barrier to the health care of its citizens with so little accountability. And the second word I want to say, I cannot stand up here without mentioning Legal Aid Society client Layleen Polanco. I want to say her name. Serious questions remain about her time in custody and the circumstances leading up to her death. Her housing placement at the time of her death has not been confirmed, but we know that she was no longer in the THU. And until we're told exactly where she was, we have to tick through the possibilities, right? Was she in CAPS? Was she in RHU, the restrictive housing unit? Because that is not a therapeutic unit. That is a punitive unit. It imposes significant deprivations on people as a punishment for rule violations. It is not a mental health program, and it involves long hours of solitary confinement, 17 hours in a cell by yourself. Clarifying her placement would be an important starting point to determining the humanity and legality of her care and treatment. And I want to highlight that point because this is about her humanity, about who she was outside of DOC walls. Those who knew her best say that she was so full of life, so spunky, a beautiful human being. Anyone who was at the rally last night watched her sister cry, watched her community cry. And that's the gravity that we need to bring to this quest for answers. And that's what we're asking you to do as an oversight body. We demand a transparent investigation, an independent investigation to the circumstances leading up to her death and how to prevent it from happening to anyone, but especially not our trans communities of color. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Kelsey Diavola.
Hello, my name is Kelsey Diavola. I'm with Brooklyn Defender Services, and I think Legal Aid said it perfectly, and I'd just kind of like to add our condolences and troubling reality of what's happening or what happened to Liana Polanco. So I'll just start with, over the last 4 days, a variety of details about the tragic death of Layleen Polanco have been reported by nearly every news outlet in New York City. One of the facts that's been reported is that Layleen was detained in a restrictive housing unit at the time of her death. Statements have also been made about the medical and mental health care she received and what services were made available to her. These facts raise many serious questions about what transpired in the unit, and we urge the board to demand that these questions and Layleen's death do not just fade from the public consciousness. Far too often it takes a tragedy to call attention to unjust circumstances. Despite years of proposals, negotiations, and questions, DOC has still not finalized policies related to the custody of transgender people. As just one example, the transgender housing unit was officially moved to Rose M. Singer Center in October, and yet the DOC directive has not yet been updated to reflect the current placement. In the last few months, advocates have tried tirelessly to learn the processes and procedures available to our transgender clients, particularly women housed at the Rose M. Singer Center. Despite our ongoing and persistent efforts, we are largely in the dark about treatment and housing decisions for transgender people, especially those with mental health needs. And our clients, the impacted people who must live with the effects of these decisions each day, know even less. If we take one lesson from Layleen's tragic death, it should be that the time has come for answers. We urge the board to demand answers through a full and thorough investigation about how Layleen died, what treatment she received, and what preventative measures should have been taken. And I commend Judge Hamill's comments from earlier that this needs to be a transparent investigation, and the board's finding must be shared with the public. The board must demand action from the department to finalize their procedures and policies and ensure that their practice protects transgender people. Without that action, we will be here again at the July meeting discussing the tragic death of the next Laylene. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lauren Davidson.
Hi, my name is Lauren Davidson. I'm with the Urban Justice Center, and I'd like to yield the rest of my time to Ms. Fee.
Oh, thank you so much. Hello, my name is Minister Dr. Victoria A. Phillips, but everyone calls me Ms. V, and I became a member of the Jails Action Coalition. What is that? And it don't take away from my time, neither. And I became a member of the Jails Action Coalition in 2012 while still working while on Rikers doing CBT. Previously, I testified before this board on things that seem untrue or to be a direct assault against the professionalism of DOC, only to later have the federal monitor and incarcerated individuals validate everything I have ever testified on the record about. I urge you to not ignore my statement today, but to take immediate action against this direct injustice. Last Tuesday at the monthly advisory board meeting with DOC, advocates, legal defense attorneys, and organizations, I asked my regular questions of an update for Horizon, and there was none for yet another month. Then I asked for the numbers in ESH, which were given. I then inquired as to how many were being shackled, level 1. DC Tulsick, who is not here, responded by speaking about being offended by the word shackles and how he's had a bounty on his head for changing correctional facilities and how we must all start calling them program chairs. I waited for him to finish his juvenile rant as a white man in power, throwing a fit over me not utilizing whitewash vocabulary, and politely told him how big of his ego to sit at a table of not only DOC staff, but advocates, attorneys, and the formerly incarcerated, and speak from such privilege. I'm offended daily as I hear DOC refer to human beings as inmates instead of incarcerated individuals, or the mentally ill as crazy. I'm triggered constantly by fighting the daily injustices against melanin people with NYPD and then correctional staff. Yet I always remain blunt, direct, and professional, and I suggest that he do the same. 2 days later, I became even more offended when I was asked to help bring awareness to the fact that chaplains were told as of July 1st they will no longer have access to their offices, but instead will all be moved to GMDC, the building that was closed last year, where they will be assigned cubicles, which should be noted that they can only access by climbing stairs. This order supposedly came from ED of Staff Wellness and Chaplaincy Justin Brodos, excuse me if I messed up his last name, and was approved by Commissioner Brand. Let me be clear about what I just said and why the chaplains and facility uniform staff are outraged. The chaplains are, to most people, they're very conscious of the facility. Their offices are seen as sacred space and an extension of the chapel. DOC staffs 4 types of chaplains: Muslim, Jewish, Protestant, and Catholic, with separate offices because each is a different faith with its own religious materials. Now my time starts. I'm next on the list. The chaplains were eventually offered one office for all to utilize and told to share it for counseling, or they should, and I quote, use the officers' lounge. Just think, we are talking everyone and anyone who might need a chaplain on any given day, officers included, because chaplains do not just counsel the incarcerated individuals. Take it a step further and think of PREA counseling. As a rape survivor, I know for a fact that you cannot heal in the same environment that made you sick. What an insult to even suggest counseling someone in an officer's lounge. Just this past April, it was reported to this board that DOC had over 600 sexual assaults last year from the island, with around 60% of those assaults accusations being against officers. Now, the very people hired and trained to deal with trauma will have their spiritual oasis stripped from them. I've spoken to a chaplain that stated they were told to use the day room if needed. Almost 400 uniformed staff and civilian staff signed a petition titled Petitions to Stop Our Clergy from Being Put Out of Their Facilities, Offices. I should note at this time, there are currently 23 chaplains staffed for Rikers in the borough facilities. They aren't even at full capacity. Their offices should not be used to free up space. What many people don't know is that when the Amazon deal was still in the works, trailers were placed on the island. Use those trailers for staffing space, but do not disrupt the saving grace in the facilities. Chaplain offices are neutral ground, and while working on the island, I've witnessed how a walk down a housing unit by a chaplain can get someone medical attention when otherwise their sick call cries were ignored. The 7th release of Monitor's report in April of 2019 also shows why the need for these sacred offices, despite what DOC administration says, is changing. Board of Standards D31-07 talks about the responsibility of DOC to provide confidential counseling during lockout periods. If the chaplain offices are taken from them, how can individuals be properly offered spiritual counseling in a timely fashion from each faith? I'm offended as a registered minister in New York City and as a mental health professional that I had to even address this abuse of power at this meeting today. Commissioner Brand often speaks to the board on things DOC is now doing to improve itself. What she always fails to acknowledge on the record is that none of those changes, such as ending solitary confinement for 16 to 21-year-olds, raising the age, adding new visiting buses, free phone calls, funding for programming, funding for investigators, etc., over the last 5 to 7 years by DOC, were not because they wanted to, but rather because of advocates like myself who are dedicated and relentless with our fight for true justice and the ending of any and all abuses of human rights. Board of Corrections. The people of New York City are being barbarically policed, constantly violated on community supervision, and ending up on Rikers, while beginning July 1st, 2019, they won't even be afforded a safe, sacred space for peace and counseling. Never forget, 85% in DOC custody have not been convicted of their alleged crime. Imagine yourselves in that space, and then imagine not even having a safe space to discuss how your world has been turned upside down. Not everyone needs a mental health professional or even feel comfortable seeing mental health staff, and often results are clergy. Have a blessed day and do your job.
Thank you very much. Shrija Shrestha.
Hi, I'm Shrija Shrestha from Urban Justice Center, and I have nothing to say.
Thank you. Blue Rose.
Hello, my name is Blue Rose. I am very disappointed in not seeing your faces at the rally for Layleen Polanco yesterday at Folly Square. I understand that we all have busy lives and people possibly cannot make it, but we all make time for the things we find important. Make trans people important to you now. Layleen Polanco was a very sweet girl with an amazing spirit. Her family cried tears of pain yesterday, and they left home with no answer about what happened to the daughter they love. By the words of her family, Layleen Polanco was left in solitary confinement while having severe health issues, including seizures in which she should have been monitored, but instead was left all alone and found dead 6 days before her release date from Rikers Island. As a trans woman who gets to live a very privileged life in this world, I am very disappointed in those here who have the privilege and capability to make changes for trans women, but choose to only give their condolences. There's usually nothing more. We all live in our own privileged bubbles and usually ignore the most marginalized, and that needs to end now. It is our duty as privileged individuals to protect those most marginalized. My community is... I'm sorry, give me 1 second. My community is beautiful and amazing beings who add color to a world that can be so cold and dual. We deserve to know what happened to Layleen Polanco. We will not stop until we know. When will we know the full extent of what happened to Layleen? What will be done to ensure the safety of all trans people on Rikers Island and at all correctional facilities? I hope today you go home and think about the human being Layleen Polanco and how her life was cut short because of your inability to care and provide the same medical human rights as everyone else to a human who deserved all that's great in this world. I hope you use your platforms to spread trans awareness and are using social media responsibly to promote equality and kindness towards the trans community. It is Pride Month and my community is mourning deaths instead of celebrating our beautiful differences. Black trans women are women, Black trans women matter, and Black trans lives matter. Thank you and have a good day.
Thank you very much for your words. I assure you I will work alongside fellow board members to assure a timely, comprehensive, and transparent investigation. Thank you. Winston Nguyen.
Good morning, everyone. Oh, there we go. Hi, my name is Winston Nguyen. I was formerly an incarcerated person at OBCC up until about a month ago. I spoke last time about wanting to start an Article 78 proceeding. A little bit of a delay. The intake at OBCC seems to have lost my property, which has a lot of the documents and supporting materials that I wanted to use in that. So while we try to find my property, I had an idea. I have a draft of a letter that we submitted during an inmate council meeting to the deputy warden, two deputy wardens actually. We did it at 2 meetings because they changed in the time that I was there. And it outlines some of the things that I will include in my Article 78 proceeding. These are some of the minimum standards that aren't being met by the DOC. I spoke about some of them with the mayor on WNYC back in February, but I just wanted to highlight one specifically, that the mail isn't getting through within the 48 hours that it's supposed to. It's supposed to get to us within 48 hours of receipt by the department. That's what the minimum standards say. The directive, on the other hand, says 48 hours of receipt by the facility. There's a difference in that because the mail ends up sitting in the trailer for a really long time. There's tons of reasons why this is harmful to the inmates. They're not getting letters from their family, not getting court documents. But I want to highlight one specific thing. There's an election for the primary for the Queen's DA that's happening June 25th. I spoke with the Board of Elections. I had tried to vote for the special election for public advocate back in February, and I couldn't because, A, I realized we don't have the right forms to actually get an absentee ballot. It's only to register in the jails. But beyond that, you can only get the absentee ballot mailed to you. You can't have someone bring it in. They only have that for, I think, senior citizens' homes. So even if someone were to be able to get an absentee ballot form now and mail it out or have someone take it out, I know there was a reform initiative to have some of the DOC staff take it out and bring it, to deliver it. They wouldn't be able to get it back in time because sometimes it takes up to 39 days to get mail. So I tried to outline some of that in here. There's also things that I'm talking about in terms of just clothes, not having the right sizes, not having socks, undergarments, t-shirts. I mean, I got a t-shirt and a pair of socks, but it was from FedCap. It was from, they did like a Shark Tank thing during a career week, and we won it as an award. And I feel like I would be embarrassed to know that things that I'm supposed to be providing on a regular basis is being given as an award and not being given, generally. So I have this. I thought maybe what we could do is I'm going to give my draft to anyone who wants it. And then I have 90 days, I think, to file my papers. So I think I'm up to just 30 right now. So maybe next time, if some of these things are addressed, I'll take them out. Anything that isn't addressed, I'll serve the commissioner then. And actually, we really missed you at the Scripting Success program yesterday. There was a performance of some scripted pieces that the Atlantic Theater Company had come in to do with some of the inmates in solitary confinement. And I hope they maybe send you a video because I actually really do think that's a great program. Sorry, I'm trying to get a compliment in, but that was great. And I'm just going to pass these out.
Thank you. And please do share your draft with the board staff.
Sorry, I hand wrote it while I was in there, so Pardon my poor handwriting.
Thank you. So that concludes public comment. And we're now planning to go into executive session to discuss appointment to acting positions pending the board's hiring of a new executive director. Can I have a board member move to vote to enter executive session for this purpose? And a second?
Second.
We'll move to a roll call vote. Dr. Sapir?
Yes.
Hernandez?
Yes.
Richard? Thank you. We will now enter executive session. While we will reconvene the public meeting after the executive session, there are no further items on the agenda. We'll reconvene just to announce the adjournment of the meeting. And so before we enter executive session, I'll ask the public to leave the room, but I have a couple of announcements. The board has a CAPA hearing scheduled for 9 a.m. on June 20th at Specter Hall, which is located at 22 Reed Street, where we will receive public comment regarding proposed rules on the prevention, reporting, and investigation of injuries. Please reach out to us if you need a reasonable accommodation of a disability or a language interpreter for this hearing. Additionally, the board has asked the department to post notice of rulemaking throughout the jails for people in custody and staff. If a person in custody wants to comment, they can do so by writing to the board or leaving a voicemail on our dedicated rulemaking voicemail line at 212-669-7900. The board's next regularly scheduled public meeting is on July 9th at 9 a.m. back in this auditorium.